Hello and welcome to my e-learning presentation on accessibility in e-learning. This is Lisa Thomas from EDDD 8103. The need for accessible learning environments in education is not a new topic. In this presentation, I will highlight the timeline, past, present, and future of accessibility in American education and online education, and how the advancement of technology has shaped and changed the needs of accessibility. Accessibility in education became of great public interest in 1972 when the U.S. District Court in the District of Columbia ruled that every child and person has the right to a free public education regardless of the severity of their disability. The landmark case, Mills versus the Board of Education, paved the way for other legislation in favor of supporting students with disabilities in public school. First, Civil Rights Protection for Individuals with Disabilities, Section 504, prohibits discrimination of any individual with disabilities from being discriminated against in any program receiving federal dollars. In education, Section 504 requires that students with disabilities be served adequately and that accommodations for things like mobility, auditory needs, visual needs, and speaking needs be met to the fullest extent possible. This means that schools must make accommodations and modifications to instruction and the environment to best serve all students regardless of ability. In 1975, Congress enacted Education for All Handicapped Children. EAHCA protects the rights and meets the needs of individual children with disabilities in education. All schools receiving federal dollars must put into place practices that support the development of individual education plans, procedural safeguards for families, and least restrictive environments for children with disabilities. This legislation falls in line with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. The 1979 Section 504 amendments require programs receiving federal dollars to provide reasonable modifications so that all individuals can participate fully in public settings and education. In 1979, Frances Davis of Southeastern Community College applied to be a part of a nursing program. Ms. Davis is hard of hearing and required a hearing aid and accommodations to participate in the nursing program. The college stated that the accommodation needed would greatly alter the core content of the nursing program and that Frances' disability would hinder her from being able to fully execute the role of a nurse. The court's ruling brought new attention to Section 504. Programs do not have to provide accommodations if those accommodations will greatly alter the core of a program or have undue financial impact. The Technology-Related Assistance Act of 1988. Federal dollars are allocated to make assistive technology accessible to individuals with disabilities who participate in federal programs, including K-12 education and higher education. Assistive technology is categorized as any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially, off the shelf, modified, or customized, that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. The Americans with Disabilities Act is made law in 1990. ADA is the civil rights law that addresses the needs of disabled Americans by prohibiting discrimination in public services, including accommodations in telecommunications and employment. Title III of ADA further prohibits entities and establishments that operate places of public accommodation from discriminating against persons with disabilities by denying them full and equal enjoyment of the goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, or accommodations they provide. Private colleges that have public accommodations must also adhere to Title III of ADA. In 1998, President Clinton signs into law amendments to the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which includes Section 508. 508 requires access to the federal government's electronic and info technology for employees and the public. This means that students with disabilities who attend institutions of higher education that receive federal funding must have access to electronic information comparable to their non-disabled peers. The National Federation for the Blind sued Target in 2006 because Target's website was found to be inaccessible to the blind, which is in direct violation of ADA. This ruling paves the way for further litigation and legislation that further provides accessibility to disabled individuals. This particular case challenged provisions under ADA, and it was found that places of public accommodation extends beyond physical space and into the online world. The NFB won this case and have since partnered with the Target Corporation to ensure accessibility of online content to blind and visually impaired individuals. In 2008, ADA amendments become law, and categories of disability are more broadly defined under the law. 21st Century Communication and Video Accessibility Act is signed into law in 2010, requiring programs captioned on TV to also be captioned when made available online. In 2012, Netflix offers closed captions following a lawsuit which finds all internet providers recognized under ADA present and future accessibility. The United States Access Board is responsible for developing information and communication technologies accessibility standards to incorporate into regulations that govern federal procurement practices. On January 18, 2017, the Access Board issued a final rule that updated accessibility requirements covered by Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act and refreshed guidelines for telecommunications equipment subject to Section 255 of the Communications Act. The final rule went into effect on January 18th of this year. E-learning and accessibility current practices. Institutions of higher education must have systems in place to assess compliance with Section 508 and accessibility standards. Universal design requires that course developers utilize instructional materials that are usable by all people regardless of ability to the greatest extent possible. Web Accessibility Guidelines of 2013, which are current and in use today, require that information and user interface components must be presentable to users in ways which are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. E-learning accessibility and future potential. Learning technologies can advance and support the education of individuals regardless of ability and support those with disabilities by ensuring personalized and inclusive learning. Tech in use today includes a myriad of information and communication technologies for individuals with disabilities. These technologies include screen reading software, which speaks or displays text and allows simulating mouse actions with a keyboard, screen magnification software for enlarging the content of a screen, a braille display for displaying braille characters, alternate input devices, such as a screen keyboard or a special keyboard to make data entry easier, and keyboard enhancements and accelerations to ensure ease of use. All right, that's my presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and learn more about the potential of accessibility in e-learning and the past and the present and the future. Thank you.